Um, if you're new around here, welcome. My name is Jeff. Every morning, I ask you if you'd like to go for a walk with me. As I walk over to the coffee shop, and what I do is I have a conversation with you that's a continuation of a show that I host for the Entree Architect Network called Java with Jeff. It started out being called Morning Mindset, and an audience member quickly dubbed it Java with Jeff, and that name stuck. And actually, later this week will be the 3-year anniversary of the launch of that show. So for 3 years on that platform, I've been talking about mindset, mindfulness, growth mindset, things like that. And I started this on Substack to open that conversation up to a broader audience. Good morning, Nicole. And continue the conversation. So that's really the intent here, is to continue the conversation that started over on Java with Jeff this morning. Nicole was over there in that conversation. So welcome back, Nicole. I found on Instagram a post from Case Kenny, who is the author of That's Bold of You. And the caption of his post said, "Words are spells." So I've used that in the title of our conversation here. Words are spells. And it's one of those carousel posts. And one of the panels, I think it's the second panel in the carousel, says something along the lines of research tells us that the brain doesn't, I forget how it goes, the brain doesn't act on truth, it acts on what it believes to be true. So it's about beliefs. And, maybe you've heard this before. I've seen this in a variety of different, stated in a variety of different ways, talking about self-talk, talking about the stories that we tell ourselves. And I think I mentioned this maybe in one of these walk with me segments a while back. I used to listen to more podcasts than I listen to now. Really kind of need to get back to some of those. But when I first went out on my own in 2014, the real basis, and I haven't strayed too far from this. I've tweaked the focus a little bit, but part of the focus of what I did back then, or that I had back then, I guess, was a focus on storytelling and how you use storytelling. Ooh, sorry, the wind. How you use storytelling in branding, marketing, business development, sales, but storytelling to communicate your value, communicate your ideas, etc. And so one of the stories, or one of the podcasts I listen to all the time, was called The Business of Story. And I believe Park Howell is still hosting The Business of Story. It's if you want to know about storytelling, how to do it, how it's done, examples for business purposes, a fantastic podcast. Business of Story by Park Howell. But I used to listen to this podcast all the time. Used to listen to Donald Miller. His what was the name of his? Building a Story Brand was the name of his podcast originally. I know they've rebranded that. But both of those guys and others would often say that the most important story that we tell is the story that we tell ourselves. I think that might have actually been Park Howell's closing line on The Business of Story. The story that we tell ourselves is the most important story we tell, or some variation of that. That's science based. It's science backed. Our brain believes what we tell it. Our brain or believes what we say. It doesn't distinguish between the way we feel, the things we believe, and actual reality. If you've been walking with me for a while, and I've been talking about them planting trees over here at the park. Sorry for the complete lack of segue. They still have a whole bunch of trees. The wind's wreaking havoc with things, but I think they're planting like 150 trees over here. Just my estimate based on what I see here stacked up and stored and things that they've already planted. It's pretty amazing. It's beautiful. Anyway, our brain doesn't distinguish between what we feel and what is true. And we see this or hear this when there's a discussion of trauma, right? People that have suffered trauma, and they have these reoccurring feelings. Well, let's just say they have nightmares, right? They have these nightmares, night terrors, whatever you want to call them. That give you a view of some of the construction that's already complete, whatever that's worth. Maybe they have these night terrors, wake up, and their body is having a very, very real reaction to essentially these dreams, and the brain isn't distinguishing between what's real and what's not. It's only acting on what you believe, what your body believes at that point. So, side note, not a therapist, not a psychologist, not a scientist of any type. So apologies for whatever that I got a little bit wrong, was a little bit inaccurate. But I guess the point being, bringing it back to a discussion around growth, and there's a quote that's tickling the back of my brain, like a Teddy Roosevelt quote or something. Can't quite place it at the moment, but when it comes to growth, if we believe it, we can, right? And if we don't believe it, it's not happening. There's I was having a conversation in the last couple of days about Nicole. I think it was with Mark, actually. I was having this conversation about what sets certain people or certain organizations that we maybe call successful or have a certain level of success. What sets them apart from people or organizations that haven't found that level of success? And maybe they say they want or they're working towards a certain level of success with their goals. And one of the things that I find all the time as I'm working with my clients is, and this is really what has spurred my most recent. Sorry, I'm going to climb over this barricade. Don't tell anybody. It's really what has spurred my most recent offerings, so to speak. I'm just responding to clients. I'm just responding to a market by providing coaching and consulting services around developing growth cultures of growth in organizations, both individually and organization wide. I'm simply responding to that, but that is coming to come about because I've heard a number of leaders say, "Hey, we lacked a growth mindset." That's the expectation. My people lacked a growth mindset, and one of the things I see over and over, and this comes from running startup incubators. It runs from or comes from my experience in coaching and consulting. Some uh, a couple stints in the venture capital world. Where does success come from? I'm not sure that's really the way I want to say that, but where does success come from? And it starts not with this, hey, we want to become a $1 billion business or $1 million business, or whatever the metric is. There are a lot of people that start with that metric, some metric in mind. But what they don't have is any tie back to any authenticity, any belief. It's just simply, I want, right? And I see this in people as well. Excuse me. I see in people sometimes, right? I conversation with a kid the other night over the weekend. Hey, I want this, I want this, I want this. Yeah. And I talked about this the other day on this segment, this walk with me segment. This is what we want. What are you going to do about it? Right? It's easy. This is what I want. It's easy to see a metric, to name a metric, to pick a metric, to compare ourselves to other people, other businesses, whatever, and say this is what we want, this is what we need, some version of that. But until you tie that to some level of authenticity, right? This is why, to invoke Simon Sinek, I guess. This is why I want that. This is why this is real. This is why this matters. So you tie it back to that so strongly that you can get to the belief system. I believe that I can do this. And this conversation that I was having with a kid over the weekend, I want this, I want this, I want this. One of the questions was, okay, what are you willing to do about it? And the answer was essentially nothing. Well, why aren't you willing to do these things? Oh, I'm really busy, whatever. If you use the 5 whys tool that I talked about a week or two ago, you start unpacking that. Why don't you, why this, why that? You get down to the level of, I don't believe I can. I don't believe I have time. I don't believe I know enough. I don't believe I have the experience. I don't believe I have the connections. I don't believe. Right. And so that whole conversation, the things that were keeping this kid from growing, if we couch it in that way, things that were keeping the kid from growing are the lack of belief in the fact that they could. Right? The scarcity mindset that many of us have around many things, of course, goes to a lack of belief or a belief, I guess, to the Case Kenny, to the point of the Case Kenny post, your brain's going to act on what it believes. So I guess it goes both ways. I'm taking it just in one direction. I'm taking it just in the scarcity, or pushing against the scarcity belief. If you don't believe that you can, if you don't believe you have the resources, if you don't believe these things, then that's what's real. That's the truth to your brain. I was, sometimes when we're struggling on whatever level, maybe personally, maybe financially, maybe in relationships, maybe in business, maybe all those things, maybe some blended version of that. Um, when we're struggling, we get stuck in that struggle mentally. I want to say mentally, we get stuck in that struggle. We can, we then start to struggle with, I'm trying, there's a word that I'm missing somewhere. We then start to struggle because we stop thinking expansively. We get to the point that we are stuck wherever, however, and we believe that what we have to do is find the way out. We have to figure out the out. We have to figure out how to um, how to get out of the stuck, which is true, right? We know that's true. I mean, we know that's reality. We have to figure out how to get unstuck. But the problem is when that's our mindset, then we stop thinking beyond that. Nicole says, you'll never succeed if you don't try. True. You'll never know if you can or not. Then you are the reason you fail. Exactly. Exactly. You get stuck there. I was thinking about this the other day so for those of you that are new around here, um, a big part of my livelihood is doing consulting around innovation and growth, specifically around building cultures of growth that support and foster innovation. I have this whole, I explained it yesterday, but I have this whole, uh, this term called culture of growth. It's about the growth of your people, the growth of your organization, and the growth of your clients. It's like triple bottom line. It's a triple focus in order to be holistically focused on growth. Anyway, I do that with clients. And earlier this year, I signed on a really good consulting, long-term consulting um, gig, so to speak, with a really good client. And I looked at that and went, okay, this is good, right? And I start making plans, not only to do the work, but then, okay, how do I apply this revenue? What do I do with this revenue? How do I apply it to the business? How do I leverage that personally, et cetera? And so I started doing the smart things with on the income side, the revenue side. And then the government shuts down. And this client says, hey, we need to press pause. We're affected by the government shutdown. We got a real lack of clarity. So we need to press pause. I tried to find ways to keep, at least they had at that point mentally, right? Which is ironic because we're working on growth and they're drawing back. But that was, that pause was a huge shock to my system because that represented a majority of my income. I mean, a huge chunk of my income. And I know that that will come back, or at least that's not, right, that's the promise, that's the discussion. Now I have to work to make sure that comes back, but um, it'll come back at some point. But it left me at least 3 months without that expected revenue. And so, let's be real, that becomes sort of a no shit moment, right? What do I do with this huge loss in income? I get it from their side. Really nothing I can do about it. Yes, we have an agreement, but what and how am I gonna try to enforce that agreement? So what am I gonna do? So I immediately go into, sort of plan B. Next client, other clients, other offerings, etc. And as I was thinking about this the other day, right, I go into plan B and I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at the pivot. I'm pretty good at saying, okay, how do we say this is what it is today, and how do we map out a way forward? And as I was thinking about this the other day, is there's also a pitfall in that, because basically it's like going into survival mode, losing that huge chunk of revenue, and then going, oh boy, how am I going to survive when the support has gone away, the financial support has gone away, um, for probably at least 3 months. And so you start digging in, start planning, start making changes, start going, okay, well, I need this much. This is how my brain works. I need this much, whatever that number is. Let's just say it's $5,000. I need $5,000. How do I make $5,000? And as I was thinking about it, the problem is not necessarily hitting the $5,000. I have somehow been able to hit and I'm just making that number up, but I've somehow been able to hit that number over and over, month after month now. But you know what I haven't done? I haven't surpassed that number. It's basically working. It's working to the point. It is it's a scarcity mindset that gets me locked into the scarcity. My brain believes that the only thing that I can accomplish, well, my brain believes that I can get to that number. I've never even asked my brain to believe whatever, right? Locked into that number. And I'm not thinking, and I think a lot of us, like that. Maybe it's in a relationship. This is what I need to keep this going, or this is what I need to grow this, or maybe it's in a business, or maybe it's for us personally. Oh well, if I lose this much weight, or whatever personal growth looks like for us, then I'll be then I'll be successful. That'll be my growth goals, without thinking, well, why did I set the bar there? Brain is going to take for truth whatever it is that we believe. And I saw related to the financial aspect of that. I saw a post, a video, an interview. I don't even know who this person was, but apparently they were a millionaire, a former millionaire, or something like that, that had lost their fortune. But from the sound of it, it was maybe they had lost it overnight or something. I don't no idea. Didn't even look up who this person was. But they said, I had this fortune, I had these millions of dollars or whatever it was. And they said, I lost it. And he said, then, and he's talking about this looking back. He said, I realized that what I was thinking in that moment was, I've lost all of this. And he referred to it as akin to a safety net. It's like, oh my gosh, all my money is gone. And he said, so I started thinking and acting differently, when in reality, nothing had actually changed other than the fact that I didn't have all of that wealth to fall back on. But beyond that, nothing had changed. I could still do the same things. I could still, work and think and all of those things in the same way, but I wasn't. And he said, that's the trap that we fall into when our safety net is gone, put safety net in quotes. And he, I think that I was very skeptical at the beginning of this video, but I did like where he went with it. He said, that's the problem that many of us have, is that when we hit that obstacle, his version, when we lose that safety net, then we focus on the fact that we don't have the safety net. We focus on the fact that we're not, quote, safe anymore. And so we start trying to build back that safety instead of continuing on, instead of thinking expansively, having that growth mindset. We get that scarcity mindset because, oh my gosh, the net's gone. Which, that's real, right? You could ask therapists about that. That's real. When we believe in something, our brain will take it as truth. And so whether that is something that ties us to scarcity, or whether that is something that allows us to have the audacity to put ourselves out there, either way, that belief is what's going to tell your brain what is truth. So I guess that's the question. What do we believe? Do I believe that I need to make X number of dollars in order to pay my bills and things? Yeah, I do. Absolutely. That's real. I believe that I can find the next client, that I can push past that I can set a goal that's multiples of that number. I'm telling myself that I do, but I really need to embrace that, right? That was the epiphany of the other day. Wow, Richard. That was the epiphany of the other day. I was like, hey, you have to latch on to this belief because that's what you're reading. And what your brain believes is true is what your brain will act on. So that's the question. So here we are. It's time to wrap this up. Um, that's the question. What do you believe? Yesterday, I think it was yesterday. It was the Dan Sullivan question that applied to you at the end of your life. Looking back, what would have had to have happened over all of your years in order for you to say this is a life well lived? Answer that question. And then what are you going to do about it? Maybe this is the follow on to that, with the question being, what do you believe is possible? Because whatever you believe is possible is. Your brain is going to work towards what it believes is possible. Your brain is going to work toward that truth. And truth, in terms of your brain, is based on your belief. If you don't believe that, open up social media, scroll through the algorithm. Of course, the algorithm is designed to keep us in our bubbles. Find a post that you agree with about some political thing that you agree with. Find a post about a political topic that you don't agree with and see which one feels true to you. Don't fact check it. Don't do anything. Just read the two from whichever side of the debate you enter in from, and think critically about which one of those that you and your gut feel is true. And then you can go and fact check them, right? Then you can go, okay, this is what my brain is telling me is true. Is this real? Right? It's a terrible game that we kind of need to play these days. But maybe that's an illustration of this. If you believe it, your brain thinks it's true. And I'm not going to go. Not going to make this about politics, but I think it's a decent way to illustrate the point. All right, I'm going to get my coffee and then warm up and then get home, hopefully dry, because I think my window has about 26 minutes left in it. So you can kind of see the front swirling around here. Have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow. Walk with me again tomorrow. Nicole, thanks for being here. And you're right. You'll never know if you can or you cannot. It sounds very Yoda-ish in a way. So have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for walking with me.